Knee stretch is one of our kneeling exercises on the reformer and is mostly focused on finding trunk and pelvic stability while we work the lower extremity. So there's a lot of quad, hamstring, and glute activity with this exercise, as well as deep core, trunk stabilizers, and then even some scapular stability when we look at the upper body positioning with this. For our springs for knee stretch, you can go in a couple different ranges, but typically we want to be a little bit on the heavier side. So a red and a blue is about as light as you'll go for this. You could go up to 3 reds, you could do a green and a blue. Somewhere in that like 2 to 3 spring range is going to be good. For our setup here, we're going to climb onto your carriage, bringing your knees down on to the carriage and toes tucked onto the shoulder block. That part's really important. We've got our hands on the foot bar, and then gently sink your hips back towards the heels as if you were going to sit down onto the heels. But we're just going to go back about halfway so that we're in a hip and knee flexion, right? So our hips are behind our knees here. Hands are still shoulder distance apart on the foot bar. Upper body locks into place. We're in our neutral spine. And from here, you simply push the carriage out from the lower body and then pull it back in very quickly without slamming the carriage into the stopper. Press and pull. Press and pull. So we're pushing back through the hamstrings and the glutes, pulling back through the belly to pull back in, and through the front of the legs and the quads. So some common problems we see here is people will start too far forward. And if I'm here, I don't really have a lot of space to move the carriage. So we want to make sure we're cueing hips back behind the knees or hips drop back towards the heels to start. And then the second thing we'll see is that people kind of push the carriage out with their arms. They'll either try moving just with their arms, or they'll just kind of push out with the arms as they're moving with the legs. So just try to remember upper body is really the stabilizing force here as we move the lower half, but all that should be moving is the lower half of the body here. Now, there's a lot of variations that we can start to add in here. So we can do that exact exercise in a flexion and in an extension through the spine. So for the flex variation, we start with the heels or the hips back towards the heels, scoop up through the belly and tuck the tail. So this is kind of cat-cow-like. Still have the hands grounded into the foot bar. We press back only as far as we can keep that flex spine and then pull it back in. Press back, pull back in. So the range of motion gets smaller here because if I were to keep going, it's going to pull my body out of that flex position. For the extension, it's the same thing. Hips drop back. We lift the chest, thoracic spine up into extension. There's a little bit of lumbar extension, but we want to make sure people are not sitting in their lower backs. Same thing here. We lock in the upper body, press back, and come back in only as far as we can keep that extended position.